Okay. All right. Welcome, everyone.
Bienvenidos todos.
There are instructions there in the chat for
Hay
how to
instrucciones en el
turn
chat
on the
sobre
interpretation.
cómo prender la interpretación.
All right. I need to turn this off. Okay. Sorry. Got myself distracted there.
Me distraje
Come
un
on
poco,
in.
perdón.
Introduce yourself in the chat.
Bienvenidos,
As I said, there's
preséntense en el
instructions
chat.
in the chat on how
Hay
to turn
instrucciones en el
on
chat sobre cómo
the
prender
interpretation
la
option.
interpretación, la
It's
opción de
down at the bottom of
interpretación.
your screen, and you
Está
can select
debajo
either the
en su
English or the
pantalla.
Spanish.
Pueden elegir
We are
español
very
o
excited to have you
inglés.
all here.
Estamos muy
We are
emocionados
excited
de
to
tenerlos a
have
todos
our
aquí y
interpreter
de
Elia here
tener
with
a
us
nuestra
today.
intérprete
Um,
Elia con nosotros
Martha
hoy.
has also put into the chat a
También
link
Marta ha
to
puesto en el
the
chat un enlace
a Spanish language version of the webinar. So
para
that way you can
la
download it
versión en
on your
español
computer and
del taller
follow
virtual
along
para que lo puedan
with
descargar en su
that.
computadora e irlo
All right.
viendo.
My name is Terry Ball.
Mi
I
nombre
am
es
the
Terry
Senior
Ball.
Programs Manager for
Soy
Californians for
la
the Arts.
directora
We
de
are excited to
programas
have
de
you all here
California for
today.
the
This is the
Arts.
first of
Estamos
our
muy
webinars that
emocionadas
we are
de
doing
tenerlas aquí
with
hoy. Es nuestro
a
primer
Spanish
taller
language
virtual
translation.
con
If you are having any
interpretación en
difficulties
español. Si tienen cualquier
with the
dificultad
technology of it all,
con la
please go ahead and put
tecnología,
that into the chat,
por
and we
favor,
will do what we
menciónenlo en el
can
chat y
to
haremos lo
help you.
posible para ayudarle.
And if you have questions,
Y si
please
tienen
put those
preguntas,
into the Q&A.
por favor, pónganlas en
Okay, next.
las preguntas y la función de
Sophie.
preguntas y respuestas.
All right. As I've said, please introduce
Como he
yourself in the
dicho, por
chat.
favor,
You can
preséntense en el
include the
chat.
organization
Pueden
that you're with,
incluir la
as well as
organización
any land
con la
acknowledgement.
que están y
Everything
la
today
tierra
will
indígena en la
be
que
recorded,
residen.
and you will
Todo hoy
all
está
get a
siendo
follow-up
grabado
email that
y
has
recibirán un correo
the
electrónico
recording of the
después
webinar,
que
and the
tenga
recording will be available in both the English and the
la
Spanish
grabación del
translation.
taller virtual,
You'll get a
tanto en
copy of
inglés
the
como en
webinar deck,
español. Van a
and that will be
recibir una
available both
copia
ways. And then
de
a
de
series of
todos los
links,
visuales
a
y una
document
serie
the
de
links that we share
enlaces,
today,
un
and
documento con
it
todos
has
los
some helpful
enlaces
links
que
in it.
vamos
The
a
other
compartir hoy.
thing that we will
También lo que
provide you is a
vamos a
transcript
proporcionar
of the
nosotros
Q&A.
es
Okay,
la
next.
transcripción de preguntas y respuestas.
Our team. This is our
Nuestro
team
equipo.
from Californians for the Arts, and I want to
Esto es
start
nuestro
specifically
equipo
with
de California
the
for the Arts.
Performing Arts Equitable
Voy
Payroll
a
Fund
empezar
portion that is
con
here with us today,
específicamente con
and
el
that
Fondo de Nómina
includes
Equitativa.
Beatriz Casagran,
Esto
who's here,
incluye a Beatriz
who is
Casagrán.
here. She will be manning the Q&A in both
Ella
English
va a
and
estar
Spanish.
respondiendo a todas las preguntas y
And
respuestas, tanto en inglés como
Beatriz,
en
in her other
español.
life, is
Y
the artistic director for Ophelia's
en
Jump
su
in
otra
Equitable
vida,
when she's not here, working with us and helping us with this program. We also have with us
eh,
here today Martha Dimson,
también tenemos
who
aquí
will
a
be
Marta
manning the chat.
Demson, que
And
ella va a
Martha's other
estar
life, she is
encargada
involved
de
with
el chat.
the theater
Ella
producers
también
in
está
Southern California,
involucrada con
and
los
also
productores de teatro del sur
Open
de
Fist
California y
in
también
Los
el
Angeles.
teatro Open Fist de
Finally,
Los
on our
Ángeles.
team, we have Sophie Nguyen,
Finalmente
who
tenemos a
is
Sophie Wen,
running all things technical. She's running the slides
que
and
va
is
a
here to
realizar
help with
todo
links
el
and those
trabajo
sorts of
técnico y va a
things.
ayudar con enlaces y ese tipo de
Californians for
cosas.
the Arts and California Arts Advocates
California for the Arts y
are
California
two
Arts Advocates
sister
son
nonprofits.
dos
They are two separate nonprofits.
organizaciones sin fines de
California for the
lucro
Arts
hermanas.
is your
California for the Arts
uh, statewide arts advocacy
eh,
service organization. We do
apoya a
grassroots
nivel
advocacy,
estatal,
and then
hacemos
California Arts Advocates is more the comprehensive
y
lobbying
California Arts
organization.
Advocates es una
And we work
organización de
together.
presión
Beatrice,
política
I've
para
turned
las
off
artes y
Spanish,
trabajamos
so if
juntas.
Elia is asking me to slow down, can
Yo
you let me
he
know that?
apagado
Because I
el
have to
Yes.
talk
español, así que si Elia
we
me
both
pide
know I need to get
que
much
vaya
slower.
más despacio, por favor,
Okay,
díganme.
so next. And I have lost the slide deck. Is that just on my view? There we go. Uh, all right. As we mentioned, there's a document that Martha has shared in the chat that has the various links that will be shared today. So you don't have to be copying and pasting back and forth as we paste things into the chat. Next. Um, these are the instructions on how to turn on the Spanish language interpretation at the bottom if you have not been able to hear that, so you can hear our lovely interpreter, Elia, as we move through this today. Next. There's some other tips here just for dealing with Zoom. They're available here. They're also available in the document that Martha has shared. This is just showing you how to turn on the closed captioning at the bottom if you'd like to do that. Next. And then we have tips for rearranging your screen. As you all probably know at this point, you can set your Zoom up however works best for you. It doesn't impact anyone else's view. Next. One of our goals in helping with this program is to make sure everyone in the state that is potentially eligible is aware of the program. And in order to help us spread that word, we have 20 partners working with us as our community partners to help spread the word, to help share the outreach around the state. And one of those things all these partners are doing is co-hosting webinars, as we are doing today. Next. So we do have one more webinar after today. Next Tuesday, March 4th, is one more webinar. If you know anyone who needs another webinar, this webinar and also the others are available on our website. So if you know anyone who's looking but was not able to join one live, you can certainly refer them there. Next, we get to our partners for today, which are friends from Latino Theater Company. And I believe Jose Luis Valenzuela, the artistic director, is here with us. And Jose, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about Latino Theater Company?
My name is Jose Luis Valenzuela, and I'm the artistic director of the Latino Theater Company. So welcome, everybody. And the Latino Theater Company is a company right here in Los Angeles. We are the biggest Latino theater company in the United States, and we have a lot of initiatives. We do a lot of work. We have seasons, and I'm very excited for all of you guys that are here. This is a very important program that we have to participate, support, and also amplify with all our theater friends and companies who are not here because they need to be part of this. So please, please, my friends, we need to be able to take advantage of this program. So I really want to thank you guys for having this. I think it's so important to be engaged and understanding the more that we do together, the better off we're going to be. So please welcome. If you want to know more about the Latino Theater Company, please go into the website and you'll find out. And I'm very happy to be here and to see you all and to just to tell you how important it is for all of us to be here and also how to ask all of our friends in the state, you know, and to participate in this and take advantage of this amazing program. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I could not have said it better myself. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for your partnership in making the simulcast possible. And in helping with translations and other things. You guys have just been wonderful partners, and we're so appreciative. All right, next. Echoing part of what Jose Luis was saying, I like to start by taking a moment to celebrate and reminding everyone that advocacy does work, and it's the only reason we're here. And it is, and having as many people participate in this program as possible is the strongest advocacy we can have for getting continued funding. So as was mentioned, in addition to being here, in addition to preparing yourself and getting yourself ready to apply, we really want to make sure that we spread this word as broad and as wide as possible, so that everyone knows about it. Because right now this is 1 year funding, and today is when the work begins to have it be ongoing funding. And the most powerful thing we can do in making that happen is to have a strong opening and to have these funds used up very quickly because everyone applies. Okay, next, get down to the nitty gritty. So what is the Performing Arts Equitable Payroll Fund? The fund was created to support small, nonprofit performing arts organizations, those with revenues under $2 million, in hiring and retaining employees. The fund reimburses a portion of payroll costs on a quarterly basis, and the program's goal is to restore resilience and build sustainability in the sector through an investment in creative jobs. Administered by the Office of the Small Business Advocate, or Cal OSBA, and managed by Californians for the Arts. It's important to remember these are state dollars. This is not California for the Arts providing funding. This is state taxpayer dollars in a program that was established by legislation and administered by Cal OSBA. And we are here to partner with Cal OSBA because they recognized ours is a unique industry and an industry they're not as used to working with. And so we are here to help bridge the gap, to help with communication, and to help make this hopefully as easy a process as possible. The application portal opens on March 10th, 2025 at 9 a.m. Earlier today, in an earlier webinar, someone pointed out that this is the day after daylight savings time begins or ends again, whichever we do. So make sure that your clocks are set correctly so you're ready to go that Monday morning. Applications will be reviewed in the order they are received. So it is important to take this time between now and March 10th to prepare yourself, get all of your information together so the morning of March 10th, you can get right in there and get everything applied and get your place in line as early as possible. Okay, next. Who can apply? The program is open to both 501c3 organizations and fiscally sponsored organizations, Model C fiscally sponsored organizations. For the fiscal sponsor themselves, if you as an organization fit the eligibility criteria, you can apply as a 501c3 for yourself and then also apply for up to 10 fiscally sponsored organizations. Those will be two different applications. Next. This grant is based very much on a set of eligibility criteria that is all about information provided and documents provided. There is not any narrative. There's not a description of your programs or anything like that. You're going to be asked questions and you're going to provide the information and you're going to be asked to upload documents. So those eligibility criteria, as I said, you could be either a 501c3 or a Model C fiscally sponsored organization. You have to be producing or presenting performing arts that are open to the public. You have to be hiring and paying workers as employees, not as independent contractors. All of the funds that are available through this are a reimbursement of your payroll expenses for employees. You have to be able to certify that you are in compliance with California labor laws, including those laws around the classification of employees. As we all know, a few years ago, AB 5 was passed, which changed the definitions of who could be an employee and who can be an independent contractor. It's a little confusing. There are resources here that we can provide. Californians for the Arts has an old webinar on AB 5 that is referenced, so you can go back and watch that. We can't advise you as to whether or not your employees are classified correctly, but we can point you in the right directions. Something else you will have to certify to is that you are in compliance with California sexual harassment training requirements. There's a link here because those requirements are a little different depending upon the size of your organization, and the requirements are slightly different for temporary employees versus full-time employees. So you want to make sure that you go there. For both of these two things, you will not be required to upload any documentation for those two questions, but you will have to certify that the statements are true. You do have to have a written DEI policy and a written anti-harassment policy, and you will be asked to upload those. Those have to have been approved by your board, but there's not, and you have to say when they were adopted, but it is fine if you adopt them as long as they are adopted before you submit your application. So you don't have to have had a DEI policy or either of these for the last 3 years or something, just before you submit your application. You have to have a mission statement for your organization. You have to be certified as in good standing by the California Secretary of State. The link here is to take you to the Secretary of State's website where you can look and see if you're in good standing. And then there's a certificate that you will download. So in this case, there is an actual document that you're going to download, and then you'll upload it during your application process. You have to be able to provide 990s along with your financial statement, your statement of activity, or your profit and loss for the last 3 filed tax years. So don't worry if you haven't finished 2024 yet. That's not due for most people yet. All you need to do is have 3 years within the last 5 years. So if you have 21, 22, and 23, it's totally fine. If there's some sort of delay with 23, you can actually go all the way back to 20 and you will be just fine. You have to have adjusted average annual revenue under $2 million. And we'll go through how that is calculated. And finally, you have to not fall under any of the list of ineligible organizations. There's a specific list that when the legislation was written, they created a list of types of organizations that are not eligible for these funds. So next, and this is that list. Some of these are because they're not performing arts organizations like foundations, conservatory programs. One of the ones that tends to confuse people is the nonprofit organizations that raise money for a single organization. It is totally fine that you raise money for only your organization. This is referring to things like booster clubs, that the only thing they do is raise money for a single organization. The biggest impact in this is that youth performing arts groups are not eligible. The original intent of the legislation was to help support jobs. And so the decision in the process came that those organizations that have youth performers, where therefore they're not paying their performers, would not be included. This is nothing against youth organizations. We all value them and think they're very important. This is a brand new program. And in setting up a brand new program that is going to be funded by taxpayer dollars, legislators want parameters. And this is one of the issues that had to be included so that we can get the program passed. Our hope is that it will be a big success. And as we begin advocating for additional funds, we can also advocate to widen parameters so that in the future, youth organizations could also be eligible. Next. Okay, Beatrice, we will stop occasionally as we go through to address questions. Do we have any, Beatrice?
We do not at this point. No, we don't have, sorry, I was going into Spanish because my brain is doing 2 things at once.
Not a problem. All right.
We're okay. We've only had 2 questions. I urge people to go ahead and want to get some other answers.
Okay. And yes, you can go ahead and ask questions throughout in the Q&A. Please put them in Q&A and not the chat. I think I forgot to go over this. We keep them in the Q&A for two reasons. One, it helps Beatrice be able to focus one place and keep up, so they don't get separated out in the chat. And because we want to be able to do a transcript afterwards of all the questions and answers to share with you. Excuse me, I'm suddenly congested. So please, if you can put questions into the Q&A and any problems that you're having hearing or anything like that, you can put those in the chat. Next. All right, now let's talk about the monies. As we talked about, this grant is all reimbursement, and it is a percentage of your expenses that will be reimbursed. And that percentage is based on your annual revenue. The program is designed to help the smallest organizations with the largest reimbursement. So your adjusted gross revenue, what we're going to do here is take 3 years of revenue, those 3 years that you submitted 990s for, and average them. But realizing that there are some sources of revenue that people have that throw off your average annual revenue, because sometimes we have revenue streams that are not part of our annual operating and make it look like we actually have more money than we do. For example, the most common example here would be a capital campaign. If you have revenue that has been earmarked by the grantor or the donor specifically for capital expenditures, then you're able to exclude that. So if you're a $500,000 organization, but you have been fortunate enough to get a $2 million gift of capital expenditures, you can exclude that so that it doesn't throw off your annual budget. The other type of money is any pass-through funds that you collect, but they're actually for the benefit of another organization. For example, if you fiscally sponsor other organizations. So you collect money on their behalf, but again, it's not part of your annual operating. The final example, which is the most confusing, is funds received pursuant to Section 8753.6. These are special funds received through the California Arts Council. These are not the regular public grant programs that the California Arts Council does. This is not Creative Corps or cultural districts or your annual general operating. These are two very special programs. If you have received funds either through the Keep Arts in the Schools program or the Arts License Plate Funds program, those can be excluded. So there'll be a form that you will complete that will help calculate these. And then once you know your average 3-year annual gross revenue, you're going to come back to this chart and see where you fall, and that will tell you the percentage of your eligible payroll expenses that you could be reimbursed for. Next. All right, so this is the form. This is a downloadable form that you can download now and complete, and then have waiting on your computer just ready to go on the 10th. You do have to actually download the form, save it to your computer, and then complete it. Otherwise, the fillable portion won't work. But you're going to fill in one line for each of the 3 years, and then the final columns, the form will calculate for you. Next. Okay, the grant covers the period of 1 year, and it's the payroll reimbursements are calculated by quarter. So it's a total of 4 quarters, and 2 of those are quarters that already happened, and 2 are projected quarters. We're going to be looking at Q3 and Q4 of 2024, and Q1 and Q2 of 2025. In your application, you will provide numbers. You'll fill out a spreadsheet for each of those 4 different quarters, and the amounts provided in that are what will determine the maximum amount for your grant. Your actual grant will be based on your actual expenses. So Q3 and Q4 will be actual expenses from the beginning. But Q1 and Q2, you're going to do projections that we'll talk about in a little while for what you think your payroll expenses will be in Q1 and Q2. That way we can set a maximum amount for the grant, and everybody knows I won't get any more than this. And then we can know how many grants we can actually award. If we don't have a definite number, then we don't know how many grants we can award with the funds that we have. We'll go over this some more next. All right. So now that we know the percentages, what actually is reimbursable? Your employees' wages. Now, these all have to be W-2 employees. No independent contractors can be included here. The other thing that is reimbursable is workers' comp expenses. This is your annual workers' comp premiums that you pay. Also, pension, retirement, health expenses that you pay for your employees. So health plan expenses. Payroll and paymaster fees. The money that you spend to have payroll processed. Those are reimbursable. The things that are not reimbursable are payroll taxes, both federal and state payroll taxes. And this includes both the payroll taxes that you as the employer pay directly, and also the taxes that are withheld from your employees' wages when payroll is processed. And there's a form again to help you fill all of this out. The reimbursements are calculated per employee and per quarter, and they are capped at $10,000 per employee per quarter. And then the actual amount is that percentage that we've talked about based on your revenue. So if you are an organization that's annual budget is less than $250,000, then you will be eligible, if you're approved, to get an 80% reimbursement of the first $10,000 in expenses per employee. Okay, next. All right, this is a more detailed breakdown of what we've just talked about. So you're going to fill out a spreadsheet for the first quarter, which is Q3 of 2024. Each row is going to be a different employee. So you're going to start with the person's name, and then you're going to fill out their hourly wage. This is not part of the calculations. One of the requirements of the program is that you pay people at least minimum wage, and that's the minimum wage for your area. So if your city or your county has a higher minimum wage than the state, then that's the threshold you will be held to. But so in this first column in the spreadsheet, you're going to write down for each person the lowest hourly wage you pay them. We understand in the small non-profit performing arts, many of us wear multiple hats. And so there may be somebody that sometimes you pay as an actor, and sometimes you pay as an electrician, sometimes you pay to work in the box office. So you're going to look at, if we take Susie, what during the course of the quarter was the lowest hourly wage you paid Susie? And that's what you're going to put in here. If you pay people with a salary, instead of calculating their hourly their hours, you're going to take that salary and calculate down to determine what the hourly wage is. So you can include that here. In the next column, you're going to take Susie's gross wages for the quarter. You're going to go to your payroll report from your payroll processor and see how much total did you pay Susie over Q3 of 2024. And you're going to fill that in here. And then you're going to look at what you as an employer paid for healthcare or retirement plans for Susie. And on this one, you may have to do some math because your plans, probably with the health and welfare, these ones are probably broken down by employee. Some of these others might not be. But you're going to put on this line just those expenses that were related to Susie. Then in the next one, you're going to take your payroll processing expenses. And again, if your invoice is broken down by employee, then great, you'll enter it directly. If you have a flat fee that you pay, then you may have to do some calculations to determine, okay, over the quarter, I spent $500 and I have 5 employees, so I spent $100 per employee. And you're going to put that $100 then in on Susie's line. Then you're going to do the same thing with workers' comp. This is the one that for almost everyone you're going to be doing some math on, because most of us pay workers' comp ahead, and you pay a premium that's going to be for the year, and then later it might be broken down by employee. But you're going to take that amount that you paid, perhaps for the year, and you're going to then break it down by quarters and break it down by employees. And then put in what you've calculated out that you paid for each employee. Then the final column is going to be where you take the taxes that were withheld from your employees' gross wages. And again, you're going to go back to your payroll report, and that information will be there. The form will then do the math for you. It's going to add up the various pieces of information that are reimbursable. It's going to subtract out those payroll taxes, and it's going to give you the amount. If your numbers total up more than 10,000, then this final column is just going to say 10,000. If it's less than, then it will be the actual calculations. Then the final step is you will take that amount and look at what tier you're at. So if Susie's expenses all reach $10,000, and you are an organization less than 250,000, then that would mean you would be eligible for 80% of that $10,000 that you paid, a reimbursement of 80% of that $10,000 you paid Susie. Next. Okay, I know that's a tremendous amount of information and a lot of numbers. So we're going to take a deep breath. And Beatrice, are there any questions so far? You're muted.
Yes, we're okay right now.
Okay, perfect. We got a sharp group today. All right, then let's go next. So we're going to go a little overview of how this process is going to work. The application portal, as we've talked about, will open March 10th. The portal is already open for you to set up your account and start preparing now, but the application itself for completing and submitting won't be available until March 10th at 9. The applications will be submitted. Our team at Californians for the Arts will do the initial review of them. If there are any questions or problems, if we can't read a document, or if you have accidentally uploaded the same document twice into the wrong hole, or there's a question on one of your answers, we will reach out to you for clarification. You want to try to have that not happen, because as we said, these are going to be reviewed in the order that it was received. And if we have to be contacting you to ask questions or update things, that's going to move you back in line in that order received. So once we have reviewed everything, we will then pass it on to Cal OSBA to make the final determination. And they will let us know the organizations that are approved and those that are deemed to be ineligible. And we will then communicate back to you. Either you were ineligible and here's why, or yay, you were approved, here's your grant agreement, sign your agreement, get it back to us ASAP, and the state will begin processing your money. This is a state organization, which means state bureaucracy, which means from the time we get your grant agreement back, it is probably going to be 45 to 90 days before you see your actual funds. I wish I could tell you differently, but I don't want to set up false expectations. I like people to know exactly what the situation is. So then, for those organizations that are approved, at the end of Q1, you will be contacted to submit your actual expenses now for Q1. Whereas you gave us what you expected your expenses to be as part of your application, now you're going to refill out that chart with the actual numbers and the actual documentation. Then the process repeats. We're going to review it. We're going to pass it on to Cal OSBA. They're going to issue checks. Then we get to the end of Q2, which is June, the end of June. And we're going to do the same thing with your expenses for Q2. Those will be, you'll now send in your actual expenses as opposed to your projected. And then at the very end, and then Cal OSBA will review and issue payments. The very end of the process in the fall, there will be a final report for you to complete. This still will not be a big narrative. It's going to be asking questions like, how many jobs did you retain? How many employees do you have now versus before? These kinds of things. Next. This kind of walks you through in words what we just talked about. Things to keep in mind are that when we're talking about these quarters, we're talking about calendar year quarters, regardless of what fiscal year you might be on. For these payroll expenses, we're talking about these actual calendar year quarters. Again, understanding this formula, the 4 quarters of numbers you give us will determine if you are approved. That will be the maximum amount of your grant. If your actual expenses are more than that, you will still be maxed out at what your grant is approved for. If your expenses are less than that, then your actual expenses is what you will receive. For this reason, because there's most likely going to be some leftover money as we move from projected expenses to actual expenses, when we are approving the grants, once we reach the point that we believe we have approved as many grants as we have funds for, we will continue approving grants for a while and put people onto a wait list. This serves 2 purposes. Number 1, if there are funds left over because people's actual expenses are less than they thought, or somebody, can't produce. As we all know, in the land of the performing arts, sometimes plans go different. So we want there to be organizations that are ready to go in case there are leftover funds. Also, as we talked about, advocating for the need to have more people apply to this program than we can fund actually helps make the case for the future for additional funding. If you are approved, you will be told, yes, you're approved, or you will be told if you are in the portion that is waitlisted. There will be no mystery involved. Next. Okay, the actual physics of how we're doing this. There is a grant portal called GoSmart, which is where you will interact with. That's where you'll upload everything. That's where you'll complete your application. Next. All right, so this is something you can do right now. You can go to the GoSmart portal and set up your account. GoSmart is a portal that many organizations use. It's used actually through about 4 states in the West. If you have used the GoSmart portal in the past for another application, you will need to set up a new account specific to this portal for this program. Next. Right, when you go to set up your account, you're going to provide some preliminary information. All of this information will be kept with your application, so you won't be asked these same questions again later. A couple things to keep in mind. The first one is when you're setting up your account, you want to set up an organization account. You don't want to set up an individual because this grant is only eligible for organizations. So if you set up an individual account, when you go back on the 10th to open up and start filling out your application, you won't actually see the applications because it will see you as an individual. Other thing to keep in mind when you're setting up the account, as with mini grants, you're going to have both, you can have a primary contact and also an authorized signer. You have to have an authorized signer, which is an officer of your organization that is listed on your statement of information, who is authorized to make legal decisions on behalf of the organization. That is who will sign your certificate of compliance. That is who will sign your grant agreement. You also want to have the primary contact, the main person who, when we email, it's their job to get back to us. Those two people can be the same person. If that's what works best for your organization, if you have a small organization, that's great. They can be the same person. If, on the other hand, you have an organization where your authorized signer is perhaps your treasurer or your board president, and they tend to go on 6 weeks long safaris for work or something and are out of touch, you don't want that person to be your primary contact. You want there to be somebody in your organization that is watching the emails and paying attention and looking for communication from us about this grant. So you're going to decide when you're setting up the account if you want those to be the same person or two separate people. And it should be somebody who is actively watching their emails. That's who you want to set up the account for. This list of information is information that you need to provide when you set up the account. Two of the questions that are asked for are your state. In California here, that should say assembly district instead of house, and your state Senate district. This is so that we can report back to legislators, how these funds impacted their direct constituents. They want to know who in their district benefited. So there is no wrong answer in terms of selecting this. If your venue is in one district and your office is another district, you decide where you feel like you are best represented and fill that in here. Next. Okay. So the filling up of the account you can do now. Now let's talk about what's going to happen on March 10th. There will be two separate applications, one for 501c3s and one for fiscally sponsored. We're not going to go over every question here today, but they are all included in the program guide. Every single question, there's one section that goes step by step through the 501c3 application, and there's a separate section that starts from the very beginning to the end of the fiscal sponsor, because there are slightly different requirements within the fiscal sponsor as to what is required from the fiscal sponsor and what is required of the fiscal sponsee. So, as we talked about, this application is all about information and documents. So the first set of questions is information about your organization. Here is where you're going to provide your authorized signer. If that's, and it can be the same person as the account holder, as the primary contact, or it can be someone different. There are a couple of questions here, and there will be others throughout, that are informational questions that are required by the statute or are required by the state. And the way you answer the questions will not impact your eligibility, but you must answer the questions in order to be eligible. For example, it's going to ask you what county you're in. It's going to ask you the primary performance venue size. You decide what your primary performance venue is. If you perform more than once, whatever you view as your primary performance venue, and then you tell us the capacity of that venue. Your eligibility will not be impacted by the size. There's not like preference being given to large organizations or small organizations. You just have to answer the question. Next. Okay, now we're moving into the document portion. You're going to collect a number of organizational documents and upload them as part of the application. Go ahead and do this now. You're going to save each one as an individual PDF and have them organized and ready to upload. These are your 501c3 determination letter, your articles of incorporation, your that certified status from the Secretary of State that we talked about, your organization's 990s and financial statements that we talked about. For the 990s, for those of you that file the 990N, which is just a postcard that doesn't have any financial information on it, you will instead file Form CTTR1, which is the form you file with the state each year that does have the actual financial breakdown. Then this is also where you're going to upload your organization's DEI statement or policy and your organization's harassment policy. These do have to be written. They do have to be approved by the board. They can be statements in your employee handbook, but you will, in that case, need to take out just those pages and upload them. This usually, given things that are going on in the country right now, the inclusion of the DEI statement usually causes questions. So I'll go ahead and address that now. This program is not like a program that is set up by your local foundation or your city government. Because this program is based in this legislation, in order to change requirements of the program, that requires going back and passing new legislation, which at this point would mean passing a new law, getting a new budget allotment, etc. So the requirement of an DEI policy is written into the legislation. This will not be going anywhere. Just so that everybody understands that one. Next. Okay, so now we've established that you're an organization. Now we're going to provide some documentation to establish that you are in fact presenting or producing performances for the public. And the way you're going to do that is you're going to pick 3 productions, each from a different year within the last 5 years. These can be as recently as January of 2025, if it's already happened, or it can go back to 2021. For each year, you're going to pick a production, and then you're going to provide 3 pieces of documentation for that production. And there's a list of 6 different types here: box office report, evidence of paid advertisements, social media posts and internet website listings advertising the production, email campaign advertising the production, reviews of the production, playbill or program for the production. So out of that 6, you're going to pick 3 for each of these 3 shows. They have to be a unique 3 different. So for example, for your first show, you couldn't give us 3 box office reports. The example shown here, this organization selected Angels in America that they did in 2021 and provided their 3 pieces of documentation for it. And then they went to a different year, and about their production of The Shot, they selected 3 pieces of documentation and submitted those. Then they went to another different year, 2024, their production of Helvetica, and provided 3 pieces of documentation for that. In the end here, you're going to be providing 9 PDFs, 1 separate PDF for each example, and 3 examples for each of the 3 productions. There's usually here some concern about reviews. Many organizations have trouble getting a review. That is why there are 6 different categories. You do not have to cover all 6. So that's why we have the variety here. A review does not just have to be a printed newspaper review. It could be a blog post. It could be an online review. It does have to be an actual public published review. You can't include a note from a patron that says, "My God, that was the best show ever." Remember, what you're trying to do here is establish that your shows are available to the public and are advertised and promoted. Okay, next. All right, now we're back to our spreadsheets and the numbers. So this is the income table that we talked about. And we've talked about you're going to give the total revenue. Then you're going to do the capital expenditures if you have any of that kind of revenue, pass through if you have any of that kind of revenue, and our special funky 8753.6, and the form will calculate. Next. Still lost in numbers land. You're going to have the 4 different spreadsheets, Q3, Q4, Q1, Q2. The first 2 are your actual expenses, and the second 2 will be your projected expenses. Next. And this is now your projected expenses. One thing to bear in mind for the projected expenses, we realize that you might not know the names. So in this case, instead of talking about Susie, you might be talking about a position. Director of first show, actor number 3 of first show, scene painter. In those cases, it's okay that you don't have a name. You can put the position down. You do still want to break them down, though, by each individual that you're going to hire, because the cap is $10,000 per line per quarter. So if you lump all of your electricians into one line, then you're still going to be capped at that $10,000. So it's in your best interest to look at who are each of the individuals that you think you're going to hire and do those projections. You want to think carefully about these projections because they are, in fact, caps. So if you wildly underestimate what your expenses are going to be, then you will not, you're going to still be locked in by that amount. Next. All right. Now, for these payroll expenses, you're going to upload documentation. And we understand different organizations have lots of different ways they process payroll. Some people use a payroll service. Some people use a paymaster. So you have different documentation. There are a list of options here for the documentation you can provide to verify the numbers you have given. For the payroll wages, the easiest thing is if you file, if you don't use a paymaster, so you have your actual quarterly tax reports that you send to the state, that's an easy way to do this because they have right on there person's name, the wages that you paid them, and the withholding. You also, if you get a register or a report from your payroll company or your paymaster, that will work here too. You just need verification of a third party that you paid each of these employees, what you paid them, and the taxes that were withheld. Then you're going to come down to these 3 other expenses. And again, provide some sort of evidence, documentation that these were your actual expenses. For these, where you will probably have to do some calculations in your PDF that you create with the evidence, include a note that says, this is how I did my calculations. You want us to be able to look at the paper, see the evidence. Yep, they in fact spent this $5,000, and then go to your payroll sheet and make the connection. And you want to make it easy on us. So that's what we're going to do for each of those 3 different types of expenses. Again, you do not have to provide everything that is listed here. You just need to give us information to document the numbers that you have provided. Next. Okay, Beatrice, how are we doing?
We are all caught up. People are listening to you and to Elia.
There you go. We got a smart group going here. All right, then let's take a deep breath and keep moving. All right, as we talked about before, there are questions that are gathered simply for data purposes. They are written into the legislation or they're required by the state. You will not be evaluated on the answers. You will simply be evaluated on whether you answer or not. I don't have all of those questions here, but every one of them are listed in the program guide. So you can go, you can gather all your information. It is things like number of employees that you had in a couple of different years, the number of independent contractors you had for a couple of different years. There's one question about the percentage of your payroll expenses are of your total budget. So it's data gathering, and you're not going to be evaluated on, we didn't add any employees. They added more employees than us. It's not that at all. These are not eligibility factors. They are simply requirements that you provide the information. Next. Okay, so as we talked about, you're going to download a certificate of compliance. This is not available right now. It was earlier, but it is not right now because the state wanted to take another look at some of the language. This should be back soon. We will send it out to everyone so that prior to the opening, you can download it. This is what your authorized signer has to sign. This can't be someone who is not listed on your statement of information. And these are legal statements that your authorized signer, there's one form for 501c3s. There's a separate form for fiscal sponsors. They're going to say things like, yes, we're in compliance to California state labor laws. Yes, we're in compliance with sexual harassment training. It is important that you take these seriously and that you sign honestly. This is a legal document, and the state does have the right to come back later. And if they discover that you have answered any of these dishonestly, unauthentically, they can take the money back. And we don't want that to happen to anyone. So make sure that you take the time to look at the things that it's asking you to attest to and that you complete this accurately. Next. Phew! That's the end of the application. You will get, when you're done, a confirmation email. If you do not immediately, let's give it 10 minutes in cyber world. If you don't immediately get a confirmation, log back into the portal and make sure your application actually submitted. If you have any question, send us an email and say, hey, I think I submitted. We can go in and check and look and see if you actually submitted. Do not wait a couple of days. Do not wait a couple of weeks. This will do two things. Number one, you don't want it just sitting there in a non-submitted status, because that submitted status is what's going to get your place in line. Also, if there's a problem with your email, you've somehow misentered it or something, you want to discover that right now so we can fix it, because that is the email that we will use to communicate with you. So please, please, please pay attention after you submit. And if you don't get an email within 10 to 15 minutes, follow up with us. Then make sure that your primary contact continues to monitor that email address. If there are any problems, we can't read your PDF, if we're confused by an answer, we're going to reach out to you, and we want you to get back to us as quickly as possible so we can keep moving you forward. All right, next. Resources. We want you to succeed, and we have tried to give you as many resources as we possibly can, both here and also in that program guide. Next. The first and biggest resource, biggest suggestion is take the program guide, go through all of the application questions, make sure you understand them, make sure you have answers, and start to pull your documents together. There's really nothing here that's hard or time consuming. There are things, though, with third-party websites sometimes go wrong. You might go to the Secretary of State website and discover a glitch with trying to download your certificate. Discover that now on February 26th, not at 9 o'clock in the morning on March 10th. discover it now when you have time to fix that problem. Reach out to the PAEPF at caforthearts.org with questions. You can also make an appointment for office hours. I do highly recommend doing questions through email and less through office hours, because that gives us the chance to make sure we give you the best possible answer, and you also then have a record of that answer. If you send us the email and you need it to be in a different language, we have resources, so that's not a problem. So you can submit the email. If you need to submit the email in Spanish, not a problem. We have people on the staff that can address that. Go set up your GoSmart portal. Make sure that you understand and are comfortable there. Gather up your documents, make a file on your computer and have them there and ready to upload. Confirm that your authorized signer is on your statement of information. There is sometimes confusion within organizations. This is also a good opportunity to make sure your statement of information is up to date and that your status is accurate. I can tell you with past grant programs, there are many organizations who thought they were in perfectly good standing and then went and discovered there was a problem. Usually, they're very easy problems to fix. The Secretary of State website is much better about updating and fixing problems than the Registry for Charitable Trusts. But if you figure that out now, then you have a few days to fix those problems. Make sure your primary contact is someone that will be actively monitoring their email, checks their spam, and as we mentioned earlier, tell everyone that you think might be eligible about the program. Point them to the resources to apply. We want this money to get out there and help people, and we want to be planting the seed for getting more monies by having a big response. Next. These are the tips again for the GoSmart portal. They have little videos. It's very helpful. I would check it out. Next. This is, I know this is kind of a scary looking slide, but it's actually very helpful. This is the Secretary of State website. And here you can download your statement of information, but this is also where you get that request for a certificate. The red line points up to the top to where you request the certificate. The view history is where you can look at your statement of information. This is one of those things that you do want to give yourself time for, because the search itself, anyone can do. This is a public search. But someone from your organization that has set up an account for your organization will have to download the request for certificate. So make sure that you can get that easily and without issue. We want those to be within since April 1st. Okay, next. Make sure that you're using a good and actively monitored email address. This will be our main mode of communication. Next. Reach out for help. We are here and we want to help you. If you have questions about the program, this is the best email. If you're downloading the documents and you're having weirdness with links or having trouble with documents, then Sophie is the best place to start with there. And Martha will put her email in the chat. All of us, it's basically the name at caforthearts.org. So Sophie at caforthearts.org. If you're getting into the portal and you're experiencing some sort of weirdness with the GoSmart portal itself, then Allison, who is not here with us today, but another member of our team, Allison at caforthearts.org will be concentrating on helping with GoSmart portal questions. Next. I would be remiss not to encourage you to consider joining Californians for the Arts and or Californians Arts Advocates. These are two membership organizations, and our membership is our main area of support. So we love being here and being able to serve and being able to advocate for programs like this, but we need your help in order to exist. Next. Two events we have coming up during the month of April, both in Sacramento. The first is California Arts and Culture Summit, which is a day of workshops, breakout sessions, informational about arts advocacy, about the arts going on around the state. On the next day, April 23rd, and this is a free event, it's Arts Advocacy Day. This is an opportunity for all of us to gather in the Capitol and demonstrate to our legislators how important arts funding is for us. And these efforts work. I can tell you, I had the great pleasure last May of being with Jose Luis in the park outside the Capitol, advocating to stop the cuts that were proposed in the May revise. And we got 75% of those cuts stopped. This stuff works, but it only works if we have a loud voice and a strong presence. And your presence can make all the difference. Excellent, Tolu. I'm so pleased. So come join us. We provide talking points. The meetings are set up. It's a great introduction if you've never met with a legislator. And I can guarantee you legislators care how these programs impact their districts. So the first thing they always want to know is who in my district is impacted. And for you and 8 or 10 other friends from your district should go into a legislator's office and say, wow, this program is really important and we need you to fund it more, is an extremely impactful step in our continuing this funding. Next. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you to my team. Thank you to LATC. Thank you to Elia. And thank you for your advocacy, for getting us here. Thank you for helping us spread the word, which is part of our advocacy for continuing. Beatrice, how are we doing?
Very well. I think you're getting better and better, Terry. So I think you covered everything. We are good on questions. It was really neat to hear this all in Spanish as well. I just want to reiterate, if there's anybody who needs Spanish assistance, we have assistance and we can help you. And I hope to see everybody in Sacramento. This is a really important thing coming up. Those events, those yearly events, and all the grassroots work, including by several of your companies, are how we got to this point. And if we're going to move forward, we need to keep advocating. So I'm looking forward to seeing you there.
Okay. My parting wisdom is the next thing that I always like to do, and that is don't wait. Get yourself organized now. Get your information. There's always a surprise. So the sooner that you discover those, this should not be an arduous process. It seems complicated. I understand as I'm reading you off about all of these numbers, but it's really not that bad. I think Beatrice and I were talking about this earlier. I suspect that the actual complete the application the morning of should take you somewhere between 30 minutes and an hour. Somewhat it will depend upon the speed of your own individual computer. But if you have all of your stuff prepared beforehand, this should not be an arduous. The preparation shouldn't be arduous either, as long as you're not doing it, Sunday night. We've all done those all-nighters. I'm a procrastinator myself, but I strongly encourage you to take the time now, to take the resources, and gather your information, and get ready. Martha, do you have any parting wisdom?
I just want to encourage you, as Terry said, to get started. And we really are here. We are here all the time to answer your questions, to steer you in the right direction. Be sure to take today's links document that we posted or save the chat. And I look forward to seeing some of you in Sacramento for Advocacy Day. Let's keep building this program.
Thank you, both of you. Jose Luis, do you have any parting words you'd like to share? to know if we're still here.
We lost
Oh, yeah.
Jose.
We may have lost him, or he may just not have any wisdom that he wants to share right now. All right. As we have vamped, Beatrice, has this stirred any final questions?
No final questions.
Okay. I hope this was helpful. Please reach out and let us know what we can do to support you. And then I hope to hear a flood of wonderful success stories. I want to hear about how great what the great things that you can do with the funds once you receive them. Then, if there are no other questions, then I will give back to you one of the greatest resources and my favorite resources, and that is time. So we've actually wrapped up early. We appreciate you being here, and thank you, and go enjoy the rest of your evening.